We're here at Frank's Diner in Ann Arbor with Monday Sports Reporters. This is Ira Weintraub of WTKA and Matt Pargoff of
Maize and Blue News.
Maize and Blue News. Sorry about that, Matt.
Remember that.
All right, obviously Michigan kind of laid a stinker this weekend, guys. First off, what are your thoughts on what happened on Saturday?
Well, obviously they didn't come out very well. I don't think they were prepared for it. And, in terms of just the mental preparation of it, they were not up for it. And I think the bigger concern, though, is when you get into a situation like that, why did they continue to struggle all the way to the end? And why was the defense not stepping up late when it needed to, when the defense had actually been sort of the strength through the first half?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we were looking back over some of the notes this morning, and the defense in the first half did a really good job. They had short drives, they only gave up 3 points, and that was off of the punt. The other points they could have given up were off of short fields. To me, it starts with getting up in the game, because, and I've seen games where teams don't get up in the game, and it's hard to actually get into gear. So I kind of understand why later in the game they were a little bit drained and that they weren't able to get into the game. But I asked Andy Reid about this past week. I asked Marcus Ray about it this past week. We asked Brady Boak about it this past week. And all of them to a man kept saying, we got to treat every team they're the same. It doesn't matter if it's noon or 8 p.m., if it's Akron or Notre Dame. Well, we saw on the field on Saturday that it does make a big difference. And that starts with the coaching staff to make sure that they're ready. It starts with the leadership from the seniors, that tailors can take all the blame and whatever they want. But it starts with them not having the team ready to play at noon on Saturday, particularly in the third or fourth quarter on Saturday, because by then, they obviously were good enough to hold on and win the game because they're just better than Akron. But you can't have that happen for any other games for the remainder of the season. And they could not go have a week of practice like they had, and claim they had a good week of practice, because they obviously didn't.
Yeah, and they mentioned that a little bit, that it was hot during the week, but you still have to be focused.
It's a nice indoor facility.
Yeah,
if it's too hot to be outside.
Exactly. So it was almost like everybody that had any remote involvement with the game had struggled to get excited for it. I even went to Elbow Field for marching band warm-ups before the game, and the director was do it again. They were kind of slow. It was almost like everybody, the fans, the players, everybody was slow.
Well, I used the phrase cruise control. I said for the fans, this is the time of the year. We have 3 weeks. We have the Akron game, the UConn game, and the bye week, where it's cruise control for fans. You can go watch Alabama A&M. You can watch other SEC games, or next week Arizona State, Stanford, whatever the games are you want to watch over these 3 weeks. I also made a very clear point that for the student section, they still need to show up, although I wasn't expecting them to, and they didn't. I was also said that the team can't be on cruise control, because even if they can blow out Akron, which they didn't, they still need these games to get better week in, week out, because they have a lot to play for. They have the makings of a very good football team. Problem is they don't seem to put it all together, and we saw worse, almost like a regression. Not almost, it was a regression on Saturday, and some of it is the mental part of it. So you almost throw that out, and how, if they're a focused team, how do they show up on Saturday night against UConn? And if they're better, that's great. But then there are the other parts that they still have to work on, and that starts with both offensive lines, because they played 3 games. How many of those 3 games have they won the offensive line and the defensive line? The answer is 0. You understand it a little bit about Notre Dame with if it's a little bit of a push, because they're really good on both sides. But you didn't push CMU around, you didn't push Akron around. So now you get past the opening of you don't have any motivation for the game. But you still better knock those guys off the ball. And how often did they knock the ball off the guy? Not all in all.
Yeah, let's get into.
I think. Well, what I was going to say though is I think with the line play, the thing that really sort of stands out to me is that it's really inconsistent. It's there are some holes there for Tucson, and he gets some good runs, but then the next play he doesn't, and there's nothing there. And it's sort of, why can't they put it together all the time is really what the issue is right now. And it's the same thing with the pass rush. There are some occasions where they're getting a good rush on it, even if they're not getting a sack. They're hurrying the quarterback, they're forcing him to make bad throws. But then there's times where you need to get him, it's 3rd and long, and that's the key point where you have to get that rush on him, and it's just nothing.
Yeah, I think with the offensive line, it's far too often that there's no space for him. He's at 13 negative rush yard plays in 3 games. That's just Tucson. That's not good enough. No,
look at the numbers. He had 19 carries for 71 yards, but he actually had 19 carries for 81 positive yards plus 10 negative yards. They have way too many negative plays. Devin has sacks that come out of those totals. They rushed for over 200 positive yards in the game. Yeah. That stat blew me away when I went back and looked over the box score. Because we talk about how they get no push. There's a crease here and a crease there, but then you have a 40-yarder called back on a holding penalty. And they get one nice play here or one nice play there, but they don't put it together consistently. And I understand the consistency issue. I can understand with the youth and the inexperience in the middle of the line. I understand that you do have that, but it should be better in week 3 than it was in week 1, especially with the opponent you played. It should definitely be better than it was in week 2, and it definitely was not. So that's consistency is the magic word right now for the team in every aspect, because Devin looks great, but not consistent. He makes a really bonehead play here or there. He makes great decisions running the ball most of the time. He makes great decisions with audibles most of the time, but then he has the bad option with Fitz, and that would have been 7 instead of the turnover. So the consistency is the buzzword. It's got to be the buzzword for the week. Making sure that you're consistent in your blocking mechanics, in your pass rush mechanics, in your backpedal mechanics, in your reading of the quarterback mechanics, in your reading of the defense mechanics, whatever it is. Because consistency is not there. Because individually, all those things have happened. We've seen them all work, just not from start to finish. And against Akron, it was supposed to happen from start to finish. We were supposed to see a quarter plus a Shane Morris, et cetera, et cetera. We didn't get any of that because there's no consistency in the game.
Talk about consistency. I mean, we said they started slow, but in all honesty, they got a quick punt from Akron and drove right down the field. And you're thinking, okay, this is going to be exactly what we thought it was going to be, and then all the problems started.
Well, in the second quarter there, you had a missed field goal by Gibbons, and then you also had that, the option play he was talking about. And the thing that really stood out to me was that after that option play, Devin Gardner, I think, was 11 or 13 prior to that point, and he misses his next 8 passes. That really got into his head. I mean, and those passes were inaccurate when he was throwing after that.
Yeah, opposite of last week, because getting in his head, last week, if you remember, he has the pick 6, and that should have been one, it's Notre Dame, and it changes the momentum of the game, and Alport just on that very next play went to the pass game. He threw a 7 or 8 yard hitch, and they just went back down the field, and he got that confidence right back. He lost his confidence. What really gets me is that they've called that option play a lot, where they call for a pitch or a keeper, depending on what it looks like. I'm pretty sure, and I have to go back and watch tape for the last couple of years with Denard and with Devin, the quarterback, that they've never actually pitched it.
Yeah.
And so they hold the ball, and so at some point, you have to be able to know how to pitch it, and that was a definite chance to pitch it there the week before against Notre Dame. It's a keeper, and he scores a touchdown. This week, you have to pitch it. Not only
they didn't even run any sort of pitch option plays under Rodriguez. It was, I think they ran one pitch option play the entire time he was there with Forcia against Purdue, and he fumbled it.
Because they can't run the pitch.
And then when they started doing it with Denard, he almost always got. I think there was a couple times where he pitched it and it didn't work. But he almost always just uses athleticism to kind of get a little bit farther back than you're supposed to on a pitch option, and then go full speed forward and find that hole.
That's an issue if you're going to keep running the play. It's a great short yardage play, but you have to have the option of the pitch, and that's why it's called an option.
Yeah,
and they haven't either succeeded with it or haven't run it with the pitch. And that's a decision, and that's a ball control thing, and that's something that they can continue to work on and get better at. And I feel that's something that I'm not overly concerned with, that one individual play. It just seems like that's a microcosm of so many other things.
Well, we talked about a little bit right after that play. Devin started to struggle, and it was almost like maybe he was forcing things a little too. He got frustrated and was trying to make things happen. Where do you stand with Devin in terms of him making plays versus making mistakes? Because he is a guy who believes he can do anything on the football field, and that has resulted in some truly fantastic stuff and then some truly horrendous stuff.
Right now, I almost look at Devin in the same way I looked at Denard, where you're getting so much positive, but you kind of have to take some of those negatives with it. And it's just, I don't really know exactly. You have to find that balancing point where he's, not making bad mistakes, where he is managing the game, and then on the occasions where it presents itself, he's using that ability that he has to go around, run around, and do things. But he can't keep spinning around blindly away from pressure, because that's just dangerous. It's always been dangerous.
What has he made? 8 starts. So you have to kind of understand that. I was talking to Andy Reid today. It took John Navarre 3 years as a starter to really grasp running an offense. So I understand that Devin's going to make mistakes. Tom Brady still makes mistakes. Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, they still make mistakes, and they get paid $20 million to make those mistakes. The key is to not make the same mistakes again and to learn from them. The one you talk about, the blindly scrambling, he's got to come up with another move other than the spin move, because he spins into guys now because they know he's going to go to that move. So he needs to work on that, and that's something that he has to shore up. So that's a mistake or a move that he's kind of telegraphing now. He does need to look off a gown a little bit more, and he got a little bit better actually at that in the Akron game than he did against Notre Dame. Now, he was great against Notre Dame,
yeah.
So it doesn't actually matter all that much. But Yeah, the Denard thing really comes back into play when you take the positives and the negatives and you kind of weigh them and balance them and see how you can, what's good, what's bad. Just don't make the same mistakes twice. The other thing is that he made the same mistake that was the pick six against Notre Dame, that basically blindly throwing it up in the end zone, and he basically did 2 of those in the game. He had the one pick six, which I guess wasn't quite like that, but it was a blind throw, and then he had the other one that the ball landed harmlessly in front of Funches, but what if it doesn't? Funches might have been there, but still could have been a defender. He just tossed the ball up in the air, and outside of Johnny Manziel doing that against Alabama the other day, and he somehow gets away with that all the time. Devin has made that mistake now more than once. Make the mistake once, don't make it again, and you're going to be a better quarterback for it. And he seems like he's had a little regression in that. I'm hoping that this week and the bye week can help him move that forward and not keep making those same mistakes again.
I think on the screen pass, though, the one thing that people might miss there is that I think more than anything that was kind of on Jack Miller, because he kind of blocked to the outside when he just needed to stay there and go pick up that linebacker. And on any screen pass, you're kind of taking it on faith. There's going to be people in your face as a quarterback, and you're taking it on faith that that blocking is there for you to throw the ball. Now he did kind of blindly whip it around the side of the guy, but I mean that was I think as much on the offensive line as it was guards.
And I'll put that one also on board just only for the fact that they did not run a screen at all against Notre Dame, and they actually could have used a few in that game.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure they ran one against Central. That game was such out of reach early on, it didn't matter. So if that's your first real screen of the season, it's a third game. You should be running. Michigan should go to run screens and be a good screen team, and they haven't run any until that point in time. So a little bit on board, just a little on the offensive line, and a little bit on Devin.
They ran a screen earlier in the game with Northleaf, right?
Yeah, but the wide receiver screens are different than the running back screens. And when you're streaking him across the middle of the front like Northleaf like that, it's a different setup. The jet screens, the bubble screens, the tunnel screens are all different than the running back screens.
It was a great individual play by that linebacker.
Oh, and that's true too. He's on scholarship too. We got to give him credit for that too.
All right, guys, our breakfast is here, so we're going to take a quick break from Frank's Diner. This is Monday Sports Reporters. All right, this is Andy Reid of TheWolverine.com here with Monday Sports Reporters. We just had a delicious breakfast here at Frank's Diners. This is Weintraub of WTKA, and shit, I had a good one going, and I just blew it.
Just keep talking. You can edit this.
What?
You can edit this later.
This is Ira Weintraub of WTKA and Matt Pargoff of Maize and Blue News. All right, guys, so obviously there were some concerns coming out of the Akron game, so we're going to go step by step and talk about them individually. First, the pass rush. James Madison, the week before, got 4 sacks against Akron. Michigan comes away with little to no pressure on quarterback Kyle Pohl. So is this something that is concerning? Is it a one-game fluke, or moving forward, is it something that needs to get better?
Yes.
I think it's definitely concerning, because a lot of it to me is you're getting one-on-one matchups, and Frank Clark should be able to beat the Akron defensive end, and whoever you have there if they're getting a one-on-one matchup, they should be able to win that battle against this player, and they're not doing it. And I mean that's what has to change.
No, they talk so much about a 4-man pass rush, and obviously it's not working at this point in time. Can more experience help them? Sure, maybe. For guys like Ojibudi or Taco Charlo, some of the younger guys, as they get more reps, they're going to get better. But you mentioned Frank Clark. Frank Clark's about the player we're expecting, not what we're expecting, but he's the player that he's going to be at this point. I can't imagine he's going to get a whole lot better. What's going to really help this team is if and when Jake Ryan comes back and can be Jake Ryan, because Brendan Byer's been their best pass rusher, or at least that's what it appears through 3 games. And so if he can be at the rush end position or the Sam linebacker position, and Jake Ryan can be at the other one, so they're both out on the field, they can be a little more disruptive. That'll help. I think part of what the issue is they play against teams that do a really good job of getting the ball out of their hands quick when they're playing Michigan. So when you have quick passing teams, that is an issue as far as getting pass rush, but that leads into the second part, which is the soft coverage on the outside. And Marcus Ray was explaining it to me. A lot of it has to do with if you're playing cover 3 versus cover 2 versus cover 4 and how you're aligning defensively. But essentially what you're willing to concede versus what you're willing not to concede.
The concern is that other teams are having more effectiveness with similar calls. If you watch Purdue against Notre Dame last weekend, they were playing off wide receivers, but they were reacting quicker than Michigan was to short passing routes. So they were jumping routes, they were disrupting plays. With the pass rush, I agree. Jake Ryan is going to make a big difference. He had 4.5 sacks last year, and Brendan Byer has been one of the more surprising players, to me at least, of this young season, because he had a lot of trouble getting to the quarterback a year ago. He's kind of now their best option there. But the biggest concern, I think, is these coaches said this is going to change this year. We are going to get pressure with 4 men, and it's just not happening.
And that was in the spring they were talking about.
Yeah.
This was our emphasis. That was like the number one emphasis in the spring, was that we're going to have a better pass rush, and it hasn't been there. And that was to me, and I was saying to you guys, is that it was sort of alarming that Brady Hoke went into the post-game press conference and was asked about it, and he really didn't have any answers. He said, I'm surprised it's not better because we really worked on it hard, and I'm not really sure why it's not better right now. And that's that's your defensive line, your defensive tackle coach anyway, and your head coach, who's not really giving an answer on something that's his specialty.
I'd like to see if he has more of an answer after they go back and watch the tape,
Yeah.
because they can pinpoint exactly what the issues are. We want to pinpoint some of the problems to be on Frank Clark, but some of the issues are that the middle guys aren't demanding double teams and getting their own, really creating their own destruction and wreaking a little bit of havoc inside. Is Quentin Washington dinged up? That's what people seem to believe. We don't get any official word because they're very tight on injuries, but if he's dinged up, that's going to impact the middle. Because we talked to Greg Madison before the season started on a broadcast live from the Glick, and they were talking about, if you get the rush, you get your pressure from the outside. If a quarterback could just step up, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. You have to be able to get the pressure from the middle as well. So, we are picking on Frank Clark a lot. It's on everybody. It's not just on Frank Clark. And you saw Willie Henry have a flash. You saw other guys have a flash. But this goes back to what we talked about in the first segment. Consistency. If you can put it all together, if they can get the consistency from whoever's out there, whether Willie Henry, Andre Pipkins, Quentin Washington, whoever's in the middle, and then you get the consistency on the outside, it's going to help. And maybe they're rotating too many guys. Maybe they've got to find the right combinations of guys and not play 3 deep at every defensive line position. Maybe it's playing 2 deep at certain spots and getting the right combination, because maybe having Wormley with Quentin Washington and Frank Clark and Ojemudia, maybe individually they're okay, but together they're just not working well as a group. So start substituting some of the different pieces in and out and seeing what units work best together, because something's not working. They see it on State Street. Something is not working on game day, and it has to get better. Or it's going to be a problem that lingers even if Jake comes back.
Yeah, they got 2 weeks and 1 game to figure it out before Big Ten season. You alluded to second concern a little bit with the soft coverage. Against Notre Dame, it was an effective strategy. They forced Tommy Rees to drive the length of the field. They kind of waited for him to make mistakes, and he did. They only scored 2 offensive touchdowns all game. Against Akron, maybe not such a good strategy. Not only did they play pretty soft, they also gave up 6 plays of 20 yards or more, including 2 40-yard passes over the top. So is this a one-game fluke, or is it something that is a concern moving forward?
I think some of it was actually mental errors in there. And some of it's just you have to give the other team credit. The one play, Jordan Lewis has really good coverage on it, I thought, and he's in position, but it's just a perfect pass over the top. He's in stride. There's nothing you can do about that. But there was some mental errors in there too. I think there was the one long one where Ramon Taylor, comes up to try and take on the quarterback, and he, vacates his zone, and that's exactly where they hit him. And so there's things like that. I think it's just going to be a lot of different things that you've got to look at in terms of trying to fix that.
I think as far as the secondary is concerned, I'll put it more on a 1 game at the moment, because the secondary was pretty good in the first game, and they played without their starting safeties. The secondary was pretty good in the second game. They didn't give up. You talked about the numbers of big plays, and against Notre Dame, they didn't give up those big plays. So I'm going to put that all into the not prepared, whether physically or mentally, whether it's on the coaches or on the captains or whoever. It's Akron, and they didn't get up for the game. We talked about the fans being in cruise control mode, but the players were in that game. The coaches, it seemed like, almost were as well. Yeah. So I'm going to call that 1 game. Let's see what UConn does. Before I make that a 2-game or a lingering thing, I want to see how the defensive backs recover and they play against UConn, because I'm expecting them to be a lot better.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, we can put that one concern kind of behind. And the soft coverage part, a lot of that has to do with the way they just scheme defense. So you have to play soft coverage at times when you're doing certain blitzes, and the key is the blitzes have to get home, because the soft coverage works if you don't blitz and get there in 3 seconds, and the guys don't have enough time to get open no matter what kind of coverage you play on them. So the blitzes have to get home. That helps the coverage. The coverage helps the blitzes, and it's a symbiotic thing.
It was really kind of a 1/4 flub. Four of those 6 20-yard passes were in the fourth quarter. Everything just kind of fell apart. So
when we talk about the defense, that's a really good point, because we were going over this morning. Someone called in and said, the defense, from the start they were giving. They weren't from the start. They were 3 and out, 4-play drive, 3-play drive, 40 yards here, 20 yards there, but nothing No
Yeah.
long, sustained drive. They scored 3 points off of a 21-yard punt is really why they scored. They had 2 other chances that missed field goals, and those came more than anything off of the one drive. They had about 40 yards in a drive. The other one came off of, again, a short field that was caused by the offense and the special teams, not caused by the defense. And then even to the third quarter, they gave up one drive to open the third quarter, but they tightened up after that. It was the fourth quarter where it was long drive, and then the third one, the long drive that ended because the turnover in the end zone was a huge one by Wilson.
I do think
And in the end.
I do think it's a little concerning in itself, but it kind of brings up an issue of mental toughness that when you're in that situation and momentum is swung away from you, you have to be prepared to go out there and play your best football at that point. And they weren't doing it.
And they didn't. Let's move to the offense for a second. The interior offensive line is had its fair share of mistakes. They've had, they played pretty well against Knicks in the Notre Dame game. They did not play so well against Akron. So is that something that you're concerned about moving forward, or do you think these 3 are the guys that are going to start the entire season? What do you think about that?
Well, who else are you going to go with? I mean, I think right now those are the 3 that it was pretty clear during fall camp that those are your main 3. And I mean, maybe Bryant could come in, but really I think right now the bigger issue is getting them to work together as a unit, getting them to the point where they're not just going out and blocking a space, but actually turning someone so that a hole is opening up, and that's the biggest issue, is getting those holes open.
Yeah, the offensive line, as we know, it's not about 5 individual guys going out and 5 receivers running their routes and it works. It's about them working as a unit. You talked about cohesion. Is it time to maybe move Glasgow to center and give Braun a chance at guard? Last year, he was en route to being a starting guard before he got hurt. He sounded like he was really making that progress again this year, working his way back once he finally got healthy. But then he had his knee drained and it was a little bit of a setback. Is that time to do that this week? Maybe part of the game this week, or is that a bye week thing because you have that full extra week to practice and you treat it like a fall camp week and you can run them back in there? I'm not really sure what the answer is. What I do know is that they're still better on the interior line than they were last year. There's still an upside to this interior line versus last year, but they need to make bigger strides. Now, I'm not comparing them to the Alabama offensive line, but we heard out of week 1 against Virginia Tech, that offensive line they were not very good against Virginia Tech. Well, they were a lot better against Texas A&M, and part of that is who you're playing, and part of it is that they made strides from game 1 to game 2. This offensive line has not made strides interior, anyway, game 1 to game 3, and that is an issue. But they can put it all behind them if they play better in game 4 at UConn, and then gives them that kick in the butt that they need to get ready for Big Ten play. All it takes, to me, is one game of consistency to turn the whole thing where it wants to be.
Yeah.
Because then go back to what we're talking about. Kalis has made a lot of plays, and he's made bad plays. Graham Glasgow has made a lot of plays, and he's made bad plays. Jack Miller's made a lot of good line calls and made a lot of good plays, and he's made some bad plays. If they get consistent, whether it's with those guys or if it's with Bryant or whoever else could come in, Braden, doesn't matter. If they get consistency, they're going to be better. They're going to be all right.
And generally speaking, consistency is a byproduct of experience, and that's, I mean,
They have 3
across
starts.
the board.
Those guys have 3 starts.
Once they put a whole game together and they see what it looks like when they do, I think that's going to be a huge help moving forward. One last concern is the punting game. Weil started the Outback Bowl. He averaged 48 yards a punt. He really looked like he knew what he was doing out there. He obviously can pooch punt that we saw all season last year. This year, he already got 3 shanks, including 2 against Akron. Is it time to see Kenny Allen?
Kenny Allen, come on down. I think it's. You hear this a lot. I remember when I used to cover the Redskins and I was working down there. We'd be out there watching practice, and you'd be watching them do punt return drills, and they wouldn't have the punter punting; they'd have a machine. And I'm like, don't you want to have a live punter actually punting? And they're like, well, if you have too many responsibilities, you get dead leg. And if you're doing too much work during the week, you're not going to be effective on Saturday or in the NFL case on Sunday. Are they punting too much during the week with Weil? Does he have too many responsibilities, the long field goals and the kickoffs? Because even you go back a couple weeks ago, the kickoffs weren't great, right? That was an issue on special teams. I think it's absolutely a time to give Kenny Allen a chance. Why not? The punting game has not worked. And they need a lot of work on special teams. It's not just the punt game. Kick coverage still needs work. Kickoffs still need work. I'm giving to pass. He missed one, but he made 16 in a row.
Yeah,
that's fine. He's got to pass on that. He's still a much better kicker than he was. But the special teams, outside of really Gibbons, and maybe the kick return, which is like a sliver here, a sliver there away from breaking one. The coverage units need a lot of work. The punt return game still needs work. The punting game still needs work. Special teams is a long way to go.
It is an interesting point with Weil. He's doing a lot, and you look towards next year, he's going to be the guy on field goals. And then you're talking about
Hager up next year to do punt.
Yeah, so maybe it's maybe it is time to move him away from punting and let him focus on those things and let somebody like Kenny Allen get in there.
Well, that was something that I've kind of been thinking about that too. Is that if you go back to 2002, where they were just a disaster kicking it, and eventually they finally moved Adam Finley over to start doing the field goal kicking. He was really good at that, but then you immediately saw a decline in his punting production. I mean, it was immediate. As soon as he started doing kicking, his punting went down, and so it is a real issue. I mean, that's a case where you can prove sort of definably that yes, doing a lot of stuff can affect a kicker's ability to do.
Notre Dame didn't want to have the kicker that's the local kid, that's their kicker. Prinza, they didn't want to have him doing both. They finally have him doing more of both. It's a bit of a choice. Outside of Mike Gillette and Hayden Epstein, how many guys have been on this campus have been able to do both and be effective at it?
It's very rare.
It's very hard to do.
The kid from Nebraska last year did it. I can't remember his name.
But it's very rare.
It's very rare. Yeah.
And I'm going to guess, if we could go pick, not that I want to spend too much time with Bo Pelini because he seems like he's a little bit off his rocker, but I'm going to guess that if you went into their practices, he's not doing it all in practice.
Sure.
That why do you have 3 walk-ons at each position? They're doing all your punting and kicking, and you have a judge machine. And I bet you it's not that guy doing all the kicking and punting in practice. He's doing enough to stay sharp on kicks. He's doing enough to stay sharp on punts. But that deadlift thing was explained to me by Danny Smith, who's an NFL special teams coach for 20 or whatever years. I think he knows what he's talking about. It's an issue. And so maybe, whether it's the mental part of doing too much, the physical part of doing too much, or he's just had a couple of bad punts now, and now he's mentally thinking about, I got to be really good on this one. Got to be really good on this one. And what happens when you press and you try to be really good at something? You break your free throw, you airmail the pass,
or you throw an interception.
Or you miss the field goal, or you take a punt. That's what happens.
All right, those are the concerns. We're going to come back from Frank's Diner here with our predictions and look ahead towards next year. All right, we're back at Frank's Diner here with Monday Sports Reporters. We're going to look ahead towards the rest of the season. Does that Akron game change your expectations? What do you think for these next 9 games?
I think the sort of knee-jerk reaction was, oh no, they're not going to do anything. But I think they did show quite a bit in those first 2 games, and that they are a talented team. And this could be sort of a wake-up call that actually helps them in a way to be better. I mean, I don't think they're going to struggle too much with Connecticut. It is their first away game, so maybe there could be issues there. It is a night game, maybe there could be issues there. But as a whole, they're a better team than Connecticut is. And so I would expect them to come out and win. And as far as the season goes, I still kind of look at that schedule, and it's not that tough in terms of, Penn State could be a challenge, but
They just lost to Central Florida.
But you could, Central Florida is the team that blew out. But I mean, there's a legitimate chance you could get to Michigan State in November and still be undefeated at that point, and really kind of, and if you are undefeated and it's not Akron type games where you're just squeaking out wins, then you're going to be, bordering on the top 5 there and potentially making a run at something. Now, I don't think they're near on the caliber of, an Alabama or something like that, but they could do some pretty good things still this season.
Did Ohio State go to overtime with Purdue last year? Was Purdue a really bad football team? It happens. We had a call or an email that sent a list of games that Bo won in the 70s by like 4 points or 7 points over 2-9 A&M and 0-7 Navy or at the time or whatever it was. You have bad games. So you have to use those games as a kick in the butt to move on. I think that they use this as a kick in the butt, and they go to UConn, and they treat UConn like they should have treated Akron. I'm not sure Akron's not a better team than UConn. UConn's not a very good football team, so they need to treat UConn like they should have treated Akron. And then Minnesota, they have question marks. They have some good things and some bad things. They have question marks. I don't think that it's an issue for almost the entire home schedule. When you look through the rest of the schedule, how does it impact your viewpoint? I don't think it changes anything that I think they're still undefeated going into the Northwestern game. You look at Minnesota, they're not a complete team. You look at Penn State, their defense has major question marks. They still have a freshman quarterback. So you can really do things to Penn State to mess with them, and I think you can go to Happy Valley and win. Indiana, they play no defense. While they can score points, they play no defense. You should be able to win that game. Now you're undefeated going into November. Jake Ryan should be back. And if you're undefeated at that point in time, you're probably playing better football. So I'm going to stick with my 11-1, and at least undefeated going into Northwestern. And ask me that.
Yeah, I think I did watch the UConn game this weekend. They impressed me because I wasn't expecting much after that Towson game. But the defense looks okay. The offense is kind of non-existent. Michigan should win this game comfortably and get some experience for these young guys on the road, which will definitely help in confidence moving forward. And then you're right, Big Ten slate. It's not that impressive until November.
Big Ten stinks. You guys watch the Big Ten this week? The Big Ten stinks.
Yeah.
Nebraska plays no defense. Penn State barely plays defense. Indiana doesn't play any defense. The Ohio State has an okay defense with a good offense. The Big Ten is not. Northwestern is still the most balanced team in the league with offense and defense. It's still, this league is a long way to go to prove that anybody. Absolutely, they could. And that's the point. Is it's one bad game. There's no reason they can't take that and get better and do what say Ohio State did last year, and learn from close wins, and then get better and turn the table and run the table.
At the same time, you don't want to judge the Big Ten on one game that individual teams had. The same way you don't want to judge Michigan.
I'm judging those are all in 3 games. I watched those all in 3 games.
But Nebraska does not
Plays no
play
defense.
Yeah.
But Penn State, it would not surprise me if they turned that defense.
They should. They lost a lot of players from last year. They're thin, but they're very thin, but they're talented. But they're thin, and so they're suspect on that side of the ball. But the fact is that every team in the Big Ten has major question marks. Other teams in the Big Ten have some minor question marks. The Big Ten is not very good this year. There's no reason Michigan can't get into November.
Although the Big Ten was not very good last year, Michigan won 8-5.
Road games versus home games.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick with that one too.
That's it for us from here at Frank's Diner. Thanks for watching.